on stage.
Really? Well, that's perfect. You're awesome in all the school plays.
Really?
Yeah.
A rather common controversial take I've seen on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy is the audience's perception of their portrayal of Peter's love interest, Mary Jane Watson. It's very popular to believe that she's the worst love interest in the movies, a terrible character, and that while someone might love everything else in the films, they will hate MJ. And this has always baffled me. MJ to me isn't just a disposable love interest, but a character that is integral to the stories these movies are trying to tell. Every movie begins and ends with MJ. All of Peter's arcs revolve around MJ, and even her own character growth parallels Peter's story and the themes of the story. To me, if MJ doesn't work, the movie doesn't work. And so when people say they like the movies but not MJ, I can only be confused. It's like saying you like Spider-Man 2 but don't like that he loses his powers. As I saw more and more discourse on the topic, I got more and more frustrated that I felt alone in appreciating her character writing, and so I revisited the trilogy recently to see if my thoughts still held up. Upon rewatching Spider-Man 1, I noticed one of two things. One was that me a year ago was a fool for not loving it this much back then. The film isn't just one of the best comic book movies ever made, it's also one of my favorite films in general now. The second is that, while most people tend to say the story is mainly about Peter becoming Spider-Man by learning that with great power comes great responsibility, I would have to disagree. Yes, that's still an important part of the narrative, but I would argue that Spider-Man at its core isn't just about being a hero. To me, Spider-Man is a love story. From the very beginning of the film, we are immediately made aware of one thing: Peter is in love with MJ. Now, at first, it's just kind of a crush, like any high school crush, but it soon becomes much more complex than that. It's notable that the first thing she actively does in the film is be the only person to notice and help Peter, in a sea of people laughing at his struggle. She's immediately a fish out of water, part of the crowd but doesn't belong there. She even avoids Peter's gaze and doesn't acknowledge what happened as he goes by. She's the bully's girlfriend, but it visually feels shallow, and shown farther at the field trip. There we get a situation that, in about a minute, perfectly captures their entire relationship. A photographer making a model feel seen, a girl acknowledging Peter's existence, a spider bite interrupting this relationship, and MJ being pulled back into the crowd before this moment of peace can continue. The next time we see MJ is as she runs out of her house, being yelled at by an abusive father that never even holds more presence in frame than a wide shot, contrasted by Peter's loving parental figures wishing him goodbye. We get this beautiful longing shot of MJ crying and Peter wishing he could express how he feels, and then that moment being ripped away as MJ's friends we never even get a full view of whisk her away as she turns into the party girl once more. In just the first few scenes, we have heavy visual storytelling capturing all of our characters' goals and flaws and complexity, using characters' actions or inactions, blocking, composition, framing, and character work, set design, contrasts, and little dialogue to establish and develop every single major player in the film. And most importantly for this video, Peter and MJ's relationship. With so few words, we completely understand MJ's search for love after the lack of it from her parents through conforming to being the popular girl at high school, and Peter being the only person that sees her for who she really is and genuinely caring about her, with her fake world constantly disrupting this connection. Moving forward, we get this beautiful backyard scene where Peter is the only person MJ is confident enough to confide in about her dreams of being an actress. I think this dream is important because she has essentially been acting all her life, to her friends, to her boyfriend, to her father, and the only person she doesn't have to act for is Peter. In this moment, we have even more great visual storytelling as the camera brings us closer and closer to the characters. And it's interrupted yet again as Flash pulls up with a new car. Intimate connection, feeling loved, and self-acceptance being replaced by shallow material gain.
Okay.
While MJ is in a constant search for love, Peter's journey parallels this as he is someone who doesn't know how to express his love or recognize what real love is. From the very beginning of the field trip, he refuses to make a move on her, and this is acknowledged when Harry gets her attention through simply attempting to. Peter doesn't know how to show someone he loves them, a direct reference to this scene later in Spider-Man 2.
Love should never be a secret. If you keep something as complicated as love stored up inside, it can make you sick.
After getting his powers, Peter fights Flash and wins, feeling on top of the world for a brief moment, only to be shocked that MJ is not impressed by this at all, but disgusted by his violence. He's essentially turning into just another Flash, someone MJ never truly loved. He continues to do this, failing to recognize the intimacy of their moment in the backyard, and thinking that cool cars is the path to MJ's heart. Peter rejects his uncle's love in pursuit of this shallow attempt at oppressing a girl, and in the process gets his uncle killed. This isn't just the perfect lesson in heroics and responsibility, but is also important when looking at the whole thing through the lens of understanding what love is. It is through Peter's failure to recognize that he is being loved and how to love MJ that causes his uncle's death. He thinks he needs to become someone like Flash to get MJ, when really, he has everything he needs already. He thinks revenge will show his love for Ben, and despite becoming Spider-Man, soon after this, he has yet to truly learn about responsibility and love. Like all the other characters, Harry's character and relationship with these themes are immediately established within his first scene. There is a cold lack of connection between Harry and his father, a bitter relationship of disappointment and lack of approval, presented throughout most of the film, captured in this one scene, and yet again at the graduation scene, when Harry quite literally leaves the frame so that Peter and Norman can have a pleasant conversation. We don't start to see the full effects this has on Harry until the party. The first thing Harry comments on to MJ is how he wanted her to wear a black dress to impress his father.
I wanted to impress my father. He loves black.
Well, maybe he'll be impressed no matter what.
Harry's definitely a step up from Flash, but is incapable of showing MJ love because he doesn't know what love is, and tries to find the love he never had through his father. He is also so shallow that he tries to solve everything with money.
I want to buy you something.
It makes MJ not comfortable enough even to tell him she has a job, something she thinks she can tell Peter. This conflict is brought to the forefront at the iconic Thanksgiving dinner scene. Every major character important to the themes are all sitting in one room. I'm not the first to point this out, but it excites me to no end. Pay attention to the costuming throughout the film. When it was pointed out to me that good guys wore red and blue and bad guys wore green and purple, I started losing my mind. In this scene, the clothing is at its most important. Aunt May is wearing blue to match what I just said, MJ is notably wearing a black dress as Harry suggested that it would impress his father, and Norman and Peter seem to have switched color schemes, indicating both are in disguise or hiding something from each other. Harry is wearing a mix of both green and red, caught in between, and when red bleeds through Peter's green outfit because of his cut, it has revealed his true colors. Gosh. So anyways, this is a perfectly written and directed scene with amazing build-up, and the climax of the scene is the most important. After Norman Osborn talks about MJ in the same manner most of comic book Twitter seems to do,
You're wrong about her.
Harry has the audacity to defend him. Harry's perception has been so warped he would rather destroy his relationship with Peter and MJ than lose the father whom he never even had. In case you forgot about this while I was going on about all the character drama, this is actually a superhero movie, with a guy that has spider powers taking down bad guys. Sometimes this slips my mind too, I understand. Something I found interesting was how in this film, Peter uses his powers for money and tried to gain love, not being very responsible. Then, in Spider-Man 2, he tries to sell photos of other things that don't rely on him abusing his powers. Just a side thought, I guess. What this is leading me to is the public's perception of Spider-Man, and Peter sort of taking advantage of being a hero to feel loved, only to be shot down by the Daily Bugle labeling him a menace, which leads to Goblin convincing him that he will never find love or acceptance from society. Also, side note, all the Daily Bugle scenes are amazing. Raimi does this thing where he never wastes a single side character. They always have some sort of unique personality that makes them feel human or add some sort of drama or conflict. Take this scene with J. Jonah Jameson being completely selfless despite seeming like anger issues incarnate.
I don't know who he is. His stuff comes in the mail. You're lying!
With so few scenes, every single character at the office feels nuanced. It's great. Side rant aside, the public's view of Spidey is relevant to the themes of feeling seen and loved, but what's more relevant is how MJ sees Spider-Man. Peter being the irresponsible young man he is, he uses his identity of Spider-Man to kiss his best friend's girlfriend, causing MJ to fall in love with this ideal sculpture of a human being. She admits this to Peter in one of the best scenes in the film, but her mind is soon changed. After her whole life searching for this artificial love, from the popular kid, from the rich boy, and from the superhero idol, she finally realizes in this moment that she is actually in love with the one person that truly sees her for who she truly is. She doesn't have to change herself, because she soon realizes that who she really loves is Peter, and she is able to finally love herself. Immediately following this realization, Harry walks in and, through some basic but effective visual storytelling, realizes that she is in love with Peter. He tells Norman this, leading to the climax, perfectly balancing character journeys and plot. People tend to complain about MJ being a damsel in distress, but it works really well here. It's fitting that in a story about love, the villain would go after the thing the hero loves. And through this, Peter learns that who he loves can never be safe with him, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk for a moment about Norman Osborn.
You know how much I sacrificed?
Norman Osborn, like every other character at the Thanksgiving dinner table, is an integral character to the dynamics and themes of the film. He's kind of this final piece of the puzzle when it comes to the parallels of parental figures and their impact on children's views of love. Norman is also the perfect parallel to Peter, so much so that the scene arrangement places Peter's transformation to Spider-Man right next to Osborn's transformation into the Goblin.
Into these 15 genetically designed super spiders.
Followed by both characters using their newfound powers for revenge. After this, Goblin becomes very comical with lines like
We'll meet again, Spider-Man!
and a trope of a villain offering the hero to join him. But I think here this trope has an extra layer to it. Much like how Norman seems to see a son figure in Peter, Goblin sees a partnership in Spider-Man, being able to respect power and also selfishness. It's also notable that the final fight between these two is one of the best fight scenes put to film. Pure filmmaking joy, energetic editing, and the perfect power struggle and balance of tension and cheese. It also contains the single best 10 seconds of runtime put to film ever.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Oh.
Let's watch that again.
Oh.
Goosebumps. But more importantly than great action, we have this great talk adding to the themes of parent and child. After Peter rejects Osborn's offer to be a father figure, claiming he already has one, Norman, in his final moments, realizes he too already has a son.
Peter. Don't tell Harry.
The film is actually full of characters who are looking for something that's right in front of them. MJ realizes that the person who loves her for who she is and wants her to be herself was her neighbor the whole time. Peter realizes that his way to win MJ over was just to tell her how he feels. Norman realizes that he had a son his whole life that he never even made an effort towards. And Harry now hates Spider-Man, and the only one he has left is Peter, which is great irony. This is a superhero movie with a triumphant final swing, but the final scene is actually super depressing. Norman dies unable to make it up to his son. Harry loses a father right after his father treats him like a son for the first time in his life, and now unknowingly hates his best friend. Peter has learned that to be responsible and to really love MJ, he might not be able to be with her at all. And MJ, after her whole life of not feeling loved, after her whole life of having to pretend, after a whole life of having to search for something that was right under her nose, finding that love, being able to be herself, and feeling alive for the first time, loses it all. Peter says,
I can't.
this is a superhero movie. This is a movie about a guy who gets bit by a spider, gets spider powers, and fights the Green Meanie. But this is how the film ends. It's bold, it's compelling, it's heartbreaking, it's powerful, and it's beautiful. For reasons I cannot comprehend, people really hate MJ in Spider-Man 2, and I'm sick of it. After everything she goes through in the first movie, only to be rejected like that, you'd think people would have some sort of sympathy for her slightly more harsh behavior. I guess Raimi puts you in Peter's head so well people start to think MJ is such an awful human being, but please, I beg you, watch the movie again. MJ gives Peter countless chances to tell her how he feels, and he's too naive to say anything. So she tries to move on. That's it. She tries really hard to fill that void Peter left her. Are you genuinely mad at her for dating or even marrying someone else? The love of her life rejects her over and over. He even promises to come to her play and can't even do that.
By the way, John has seen my show 5 times. Harry has seen it twice. Aunt May has seen it. My sick mother got out of bed to see it. Even my father. He came backstage to borrow cash. But my best friend?
Then once she finally thinks she's moved on, he comes back to her and asks her to break up with her fiancé. If you can't see the audacity in this action, if you can't understand why MJ would be appalled by this, please reconsider how humans think. Of course, she hasn't really moved on at all. Unfortunately, she can't fill that void, but she can maybe try and understand it. In this moment with John, similar to the moment at the end of Spider-Man 1, MJ is subconsciously building this suspicion and wants to test it out. She goes to Peter once more, not to get him back, but to understand. And once she does, she is left empty. Spider-Man 2 at first feels like a movie that goes full circle. Peter goes through this whole thing just to end up right back where he started, unwilling to risk MJ's life for his own pleasure, and MJ goes through all that just to come back to where she started, a hole in her chest where Peter should be. But the beauty is that that is not where the film ends. And the ending might upset some people. I know it upsetted me when I first saw it. MJ leaves John at the wedding. I think this right here is what presses most people's buttons, but I've come to terms with it for one reason. Exaggeration creates impact. Raimi loves his exaggeration, from turning delivering pizzas into an action scene to making the worst day of Peter's life even worse by making it so we can't even get some champagne. I think one of the reasons he balances his humorous, cheesy style with drama so well is because of this. Exaggeration can be funny, but it is also simultaneously enhancing emotion. I think that instead of MJ leaving just a normal date, she leaves the wedding because the wedding is essentially her final chance to make a choice. It is now or never. Either live safe from danger but not completely whole, or to risk death for feeling alive. Peter is now able to have MJ not because of his irresponsibility, but because he loves MJ enough to give her this choice. Protecting her is denying her a choice of what she wants. All it took was some honesty, some understanding, and some sacrifice. This scene is also a pretty obvious reference to The Graduate, and frankly, hilarious. MJ is my favorite love interest in a comic book film, and it's always upsetted me that people seem to hate her. To me, she is the embodiment of exploring love, not just a romantic love, but the concepts of loving yourself, feeling loved, giving love, and seeking love. She perfectly parallels Peter's progression throughout the whole trilogy, is a complex, relatable, and active character with her own flaws and goals and struggle. She's human, just like all these stories are very human. And I think that we should stop criticizing these films for making the characters feel real, for not being perfect and always making the right choices, for maybe complicating things more than they need to be. Because without that humanity, without that struggle, without those flaws, there is no more story about love. Love is beautiful, but it takes effort. And maybe if we put as much effort into gaining something from these stories as the artists did to create them, we might finally learn some love.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit.
Wait. I think I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, Spider-Man 3.